as a transportation planner one at a Council of Governments in Texas, in Bryan College Station. And where a lot of you probably know me from is from my work at MAPA, where I spent the last 6.5 years. I'm a graduate of Iowa State CRP program in 2012. And just some little personal background. I was raised in a little town called Haverhill, which is in Marshall County, just to the east of us here. And I graduated from Marshalltown. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some participant introductions just to kind of help me get to know all of our regional stakeholders. I'm hoping that we have enough people in here now. I know there's still some people trickling in, but I'm going to go through a list of MPOs and RPAs so I can kind of get an idea as to kind of who's here and things like that. So I'm just going to call out your agency name, and if you could just if everyone could just unmute and turn your cameras on for about 5 minutes, that'd be really appreciated. But I'm going to call out your organization, and then so if you're just from that organization, just say who you are and kind of just what you do, and we'll kind of get right through this. So is there anyone here from Ames MPO?
Yep, I'm Kyle Thompson, transportation planner for Ames MPO. I believe I'm the only one from our MPO on today. And I pretty much handle most of the day-to-day stuff. We're a small MPO, so I kind of do most of our stuff here. So,
okay. Corridor MPO.
Good morning. My name is Liz Burke. I'm the Corridor MPO manager. We have 2 other staff who are also on the meeting this morning, and we're out of Cedar Rapids.
Okay. MAPA MPO.
Hey, Travis. This is Lindsay Button. I'm the transportation planner with MAPA. I'm also kind of running the RPA 18. So I think I might be the only one from MAPA on this morning. We have quite a few conflicting meetings at this time slot, unfortunately. So I'll be ducking out a bit early, but good to see everybody.
Bi-State MPO.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bambus with Bi-State. I'm a planner, and I don't believe Gina's on today, but another planner, Dave, is on with us.
And I see that Gina just joined right as you said that. So Des Moines MPO.
Good morning, everyone. Z Chan here with the Des Moines area MPO. You'll hear a bit more from us later this morning. Happy to be here.
Dubuque MPO. MPO of Johnson County.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Kent Ralston here in Iowa City. I'm the executive director of the Metropolitan Planning Organization of Johnson County. Been here for about 18 years, been the director since 2011, I believe. And we're a team of 5, but I'm the only one on the call today.
Simcoe MPO.
Hi, good morning. I'm Corinne Erickson. I'm the regional planning manager here at Simcoe. And I typically help with the RPA side, and then Ryan is here as well. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep, and I'm on. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, Michelle.
Ryan Brower. I'm a regional planner here at Simcoe. My main focuses revolve around GIS and transportation planning in the MPO.
And I'm on here as well. Michelle Boston-Ellis. I'm the executive director at Simcoe.
Okay, and then Blackhawk County MPO.
Good morning, Nick Fratsky with Blackhawk County MPO, Director of Transportation. We staff the MPO and the RTA, and also operate the regional transit agency and onboard public transit. And I think Kyle and Aldina are both on as well.
Yep, I'm Aldina. I'm also with Intercog, Blackhawk County MPO. Sorry, I'm having some laptop difficulties.
Kyle Duran, I'm here.
Okay, RPA 1.
I'm here.
Was that Aaron?
Yep, that's me. Can you hear me?
Little faint, but we hear you. RPA 2.
Yeah, that's me, Chris Diggins. I'm the transportation planner at Nyakog.
RPA 3.
Good morning, Ted Carusis. I'm the Executive Director for Northwest Iowa Planning. According to my staff, I don't do much, but I still handle the RPA duties here. So
RPA 4. I guess, yeah, I guess that's simply, you guys already talked. Yeah.
Yep, that goes back to Simcoe. We're also RPA 4.
Yep. RPA 5.
I'm Stacy Lynch. I'm the Community Development Director at Midas, and I'm also the Transportation Planner. And it's a staff of 1.
RPA 6. I think you're muted, Marty. So we're at RPA 7, RPA 8. No one. RPA 9. Same staff as by state. RPA 10.
Hello, everyone.
Did all of you speak?
My name is
Okay.
Justice Income. I'm a transportation planner and I double up as a GIS specialist. I'm sitting in for Mary Rump, who is the transportation director and currently out of town for her vacation. So that'll be it.
Okay. RPA 11. I think I just saw Andrew come on. RPA 12. Okay, RPA 12.
Good morning, Chris Whitaker, Region 12 Council of Governments in Carroll. I'm the Local Assistance Director.
RPA 13.
I'm Tammy DeBoard. I'm the administrator for RPA 13 and work on some of the plans.
And I'm Danny Briggs. I work mainly on the RPA plan part of things and then also in community development.
Okay. RPA 14.
I am Jessica Hagan, the transportation planner at CCOG, and I believe that Beth Waddle, our executive director, is on as well.
RPA 15.
This is Chris Kukla. I'm the transportation planner for RPA 15 in Ottumwa.
RPA 16.
This is Jared Lassiter. I'm with the Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Commission in Burlington. I am a senior planner. I work with transportation and community development planning.
Okay, RPA 17.
I'm Nicole Moore, Executive Director with Sheraton Valley Planning and Development and Transportation Planner, and I have Julie Pribble, Transportation Planner as well.
Okay. And then we heard from Lindsay already with 18. So just to go over the agenda a little bit today, we're going to start out with a Systems Planning Bureau update from Garrett Peterson and Sam Hiscox. Then we'll go to a program management update with Zach Bidding. Following that, we'll have a Federal Highway Administration safety update from Nicole 1 year. After that, Millie Ortiz will talk about the state bicycle database. And then to kind of finish out the early morning session, I'm going to lead a discussion on quarterly meetings, just the general format of them, and kind of go over the survey responses that I sent out to you guys probably a couple months ago. Then we'll have a break. Then Z Chen with the Des Moines MPO will have a data bike software for pavement data presentation with Intrans here at Iowa State. Then the Maria Hobbs and Caleb Whitehouse will have a rail update. Andrea White will have a carbon reduction strategy update. And then at the end, there'll be just a chance for reminders, comments, questions, and then we'll hope to be out of here by somewhere between 11:45 and noon. So with that, our first update is from Garrett Peterson at Systems Planning.
Thanks, Travis.
Just a few updates from me before I hand it over to Sam. We didn't have a grant programs update on the agenda, so I'll just start with a couple of program updates. If you watched our commission workshop presentations last week, we did present the statewide transportation alternative recommendations to the commission. We had $10 million available in this initial round of kind of this reformed TAP program. As a reminder, that was 2 years worth. So Deb ran through those recommendations with the commission. We received 28 applications requesting a total of $21 million. So Deb shared our recommended project awards, 10 different projects, including 4 Safe Routes to School projects. Those will go back to the commission for their consideration and action at the April 9th business meeting. If you're paying attention to our NEVI program, that's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, we've had a notice of funding opportunity that's been posted for a while now. We did extend our deadline. We had an initial deadline posted for March 13th on that program, and we have now extended that to April 19th. The primary reason for that is some updated guidance from Federal Highway related to the output voltage requirements for chargers. They clarified some things that will more or less open the door to Tesla being able to apply and I guess be eligible for that program under the federal requirements. We had been seeing other states were actually making awards to Tesla already, and I think there was just some misunderstandings in terms of if you were to strictly apply the federal requirements for the voltage output there, Tesla was technically ineligible, so they've loosened that. We, as a result, have updated our own technical requirements, also taking the opportunity to kind of tighten up some things in our NOFO based on some lessons learned in other states. Couple of staffing updates. I think that we had talked in maybe at the December meeting that we were looking to add some GIS capacity to the Bureau. So we retooled a vacant position, added that to our mapping and geographic information team, and we posted a position for Transportation Planner 1 who would provide more GIS support to the Bureau. We did receive 21 applications for that position, and we're looking to interview our top 5 here next week. So we hope to have that position filled here in April. And then our big summer traffic counting program effort, we're in the middle of hiring for that right now. We did make some changes to our hiring approach, how we're advertising and what we're paying that temporary staff to try to kind of boost our applicant numbers. And so far that's been successful. We've received over 60 applications already. It'll likely continue to be posted here for another month or so, but we've already made hires for 15 temporary staff to help support that summer traffic survey, and should have all of the numbers that we need by the looks of it at this point, so shouldn't have to make any adjustments to our count program. So those are my updates, Travis. I'll hand it over to Sam.
All right, thanks, Garrett. Yeah, just a couple things from me, a couple random things before we jump into the pavement collection. So if some of you have probably already heard, Dakin Schultz, our District 3 Transportation Planner, will be retiring, I believe, and Dakin, jump in if I'm wrong, I believe the last day is March 29th. So congratulations to Dakin on that. So I guess there'll be a district planner position opening up soon for that area. And until then, anybody in District 3, so I believe that'd be Simcoe RPAs 3, 4, and 12. Please feel free to reach out to Travis on any planning items, anything that you normally would have asked Dakin. Please feel free to go directly to Travis or myself, and we'll try to get you answers as best we can. So we'll kind of start trying to fill in a little bit for Dakin as they work to refill that position in the future. So that's one update. Some other long range planning things we've got going on with the planning team and systems planning. The resiliency improvement plan, I know we've mentioned this at some previous meetings, that has been completed. We're going through one final review with the governor's office before we actually submit that to Federal Highway for approval. Once we're able to get that approved, we'll probably come back to a future quarterly meeting and have Sam Sturts give a little more in-depth presentation on that for anybody that's interested. I know we've had a few agencies reach out about kind of what's in that document and what our kind of strategies moving forward look like. So we'll be sure to keep everybody in the loop on that. Hopefully it's a pretty quick review and approval. Other plans, so Millie's updating the bicycle and pedestrian long range plan right now. We're anticipating that will be done by the fall. We've also got a handful of staff working with the rail team. We're updating the state rail plan. We're hoping to have that done by early 2025, so probably January-ish. And then we're also kind of starting to look into the public transit plan, and that update will be due next year as well. So just bring those up if anybody's working on long range plans or anything else and would normally reference those documents and pull any data from them. Feel free to reach out to us. We might have some updated stuff that we could help with before those plans are officially finalized. So then my last update is on the slide here, payment data collection. So many of you are already aware. Pavement data is collected statewide on a rotating schedule, so the state's kind of split up into those quadrants shown on that map there. All paved roads are collected at least every 4 years, and that's paid for by the state. But agencies can opt in to have the pavement data collected more often, so every 2 years for their quadrant. It's just the agencies would just have to pay for that. So for data that could be collected in 2025, it'd be Ames, Des Moines, RPAs 11, 13, 14, and 17. If you would like to opt in, reach out to Inya at Iowa State and Intrans. His contact's there at the bottom for any questions, or he can provide estimates on what that might cost if you're looking to do that. And you would obviously need to get that into your tip if you wanted to go that route. There is also an option for local jurisdictions if the agencies don't want to opt in, but a city wanted to opt in, that can be done as well. They would just need to provide local funds for that. So we will we'll have Travis send a follow-up email to everybody after the meeting with some of this background information and kind of steps moving forward if anybody would like to opt in for 2025. So I think normally in the past, Zach would kind of give everybody a heads up. So he would have given everybody a heads up back in December for 2025. So we're one meeting behind, but we'll try to make sure we give everybody plenty of heads up in the future if anybody was wanting to opt in. So that's all I've got on that. Again, we'll send a follow-up email and feel free to reach out with questions. So, thanks, Travis.
So now we're going to go to Zach Bidding with a Program Management Bureau update. You're muted, Zach.
That should be better. So 3 weeks ago, we sent out funding targets for the Highway and Alternatives Program. That included final targets for program year 24 and then estimated funding targets for program years 25 through 28. So I think many of you probably saw some changes in your funding targets, and this was largely due to 2 reasons. One was that we started incorporating the 2020 census populations in 25 through 28. And then second was the obligation limitation. So federal highway places a limit or a ceiling on the total obligations that can be incurred for the federal aid highway program during a year. And so last year, program years 25 through 27, we saw that the obligation limitation was 87.2%. But then this year, based on continuing resolution information, that dropped down to 85.8%. So those 2 reasons those 2 things were the reasons that resulted in the changes to your funding targets for this last year. Then a week and a half ago, the president did sign the 2024 Consolidated Appropriations Act. However, we haven't received any obligation limitation notices or any of the information quite yet for those apportionments from federal highway. So it's really going to depend on the magnitude of if there's any sort of changes in the apportionments from the continuing resolutions to that Consolidated Appropriations Act. If the magnitudes are great enough that we need to send out revised funding targets, we will. But, you know, at this time, we're not really expecting the magnitude to be that great, if any. So we would just say, don't expect to see any revised funding targets forthcoming here in the next couple of weeks or couple of months. Also, we sent out the tip guidelines. So there were not a lot of changes to the guidelines. The changes that did occur were quite minor. Mostly it was just updates here and there. And then I guess the most significant update would just be its appearance. And that was largely due to incorporate the DOT's new branding guidelines. So that's why it would look different. That's why our PowerPoints look different. And they all look much better than in previous years. So over the next year, I will be taking a deeper look into the guidelines, mainly to determine if there will need to be any changes that relate to 23 CFR, or if there's any other sort of process improvements that, you know, we can incorporate in the guidelines relating to TPMS, or just, you know, updating our TIP and STIP documents. But as always, we encourage everyone, all staff, to review the guidelines every year in preparation of developing your tips. On draft tips, final tips, this is just a reminder that your draft tips should be submitted to me by June 15th, with the final tip submitted by July 15th. Are there any questions on funding targets or guidelines? Thank you.
Okay, so we're quite a bit ahead right now, but is Nicole 1 year here already?
I am.
Awesome. Are you able to share your screen?
I believe so. Are you able to see a PowerPoint?
We can, yeah.
Okay. All right, so hello everyone. I am Nicole 1 year. I am the new Safety and Operations Specialist with the Iowa Division of Federal Highway Administration. I've been here since last April. And I'm going to talk to you today about some updates to the new Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So I'm going to give just an overview of some of the major changes in this 11th edition. A quick disclaimer, so except for the statutes and regulations cited, the contents of this presentation do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the state or the public in any way. This presentation is intended only to provide information regarding existing requirements under the law or agency policy. So a little bit before I jump into the actual changes, just going to review what the MUTCD is. And the MUTCD, Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, is issued as the national standard for traffic control devices on any roadway, bikeway, or shared use path that's open to public travel. Traffic control devices are the signs, signals, and markings that you see in your travels every day that communicate the traffic regulations, help guide you to your destination, and keep you safe as you cross the street or operate a bicycle. In short, these devices really just help communicate to the road users how the facility is intended to be used. To go over a little bit on the development of the new MUTCD and the process that Federal Highway took in this. So the notice of proposed amendments to the MUTCD was published in the Federal Register on December 14th, 2020. There was a public docket comment where people were able to respond to those proposed changes that closed 5 months later on May 14th, 2021. During that time, more than 17,000 submissions were made to the docket by individuals, organizations, as well as agencies. While these submissions contained over 100,000 individual comments in total, fewer than half were unique comments, with the remainder representing either duplications or letter writing campaigns. But there was still a lot for them to go through, so that's why it took about 4 years for them to go through those. So ultimately, the final rule for the new edition was published on December 19th of last year, 2023, and then the rule became effective 30 days later on January 18th, 2024. I'm going in a little bit on how the state then adopts this new MUTCD and implements it in these provisions. So in accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 23, Part 655, as mentioned before, the MUTCD is the national standard for traffic control devices for all streets, highways, and bicycle paths open to public travel. So state and federal agencies are allowed to develop their own traffic control standards and criteria through the issuance of their own MUTCD or state supplements to the national MUTCD, as long as those documents are what is called substantial conformance. So basically, they have to be as strict or stricter than the national MUTCD. Iowa in the past has had a supplement, so we really only have one major change to the national MUTCD in past editions, and that is that we allow the rollout stop signs for school zones. I believe the plan is for them to continue to do a supplement, so they will plan to go through and adopt the national MUTCD and then just have the supplement. So any changes, so again, if any of their standards or specifications are more strict, those will be part of the supplement as well. So this regulation does provide the states up to 2 years to adopt the new edition or revisions of the MUTCD, or to update or develop their state MUTCD or state supplement. Again, those changes have to be in that substantial conformance. So Iowa is starting to undergo that process. They're working with us in our division office to make sure any of their changes are in substantial conformance. And I believe the plan is sometime next spring or summer to go through the state rulemaking and update the administrative code that will accept this 11th edition of the MUTCD as the new standard. And then there's also state laws that then make that apply to local agencies as well. And again, local agencies are, again, able to be more strict than the national MUTCD as well. So one of the things that did change or changes with this is the status of interim approvals. So for instance, the interim approval for rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So with the adoption of the new MUTCD, the Federal Highway Administration terminates the interim approvals for those provisional devices or applications that have been incorporated into the 11th edition, either in whole or in part. Agencies that had received interim approval for those items listed in the notice of final rule are released from the requirements to maintain and update a record of locations at which the provisional devices or applications have been implemented. And existing installations that do not comply with the provisions as adopted in this new edition of the MUTCD must be brought into compliance by either a compliance state that's established in the final rule, if applicable, or through systematic replacement and upgrade if a compliance state is not specified. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the compliance states in a few minutes. So one of the other things that came about around the same time is the final rule for PROAG, or the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines. So this was really kind of going on with the development of the new MUTCD, and the PROAG final rule was issued. While there has been significant agency coordination on the PROAG rulemaking, the timing of the access board's actions did not allow for the new PROAG requirements to be addressed in this new edition, 11th edition of the MUTCD. And although the PROAG final rule was issued on August 8th of 2023, just a few months before the final rule for the MUTCD was published, it has yet to be adopted by the U.S. Department of Justice, which would make it an enforceable federal regulation. So once that does happen, the Department of Transportation can then adopt PROAG as a regulation for its agencies. And then after that happens, then Federal Highway will begin the rulemaking and can propose changes to the MUTCD to address the PROAG requirements. So while they're not addressed now, that is something that will be coming in the future. So as stated earlier, agencies will generally update any existing device that no longer complies as part of a systematic upgrading process. So for instance, if one of your signs needs to be replaced due to age or low retroreflectivity, then you would upgrade it to the newest applicable device at that time. However, there are 6 provisions that have been identified for specific devices or applications that must be implemented by specific compliance states. And these range anywhere from a 2026 compliance state for maintaining minimum maintained retroreflectivity for pavement markings, all the way up to 2034. The compliance states, I'm not going to go into the specific compliance states, but they are summarized in the MUTCD in Table 1B-1. It lists the specific provisions, the relevant sections of the MUTCD, and then the compliance states for the implementation, given as a time period, either usually 5 or 10 years from when the 11th edition became effective, which again was January 18th, 2024. So now I'm going to look at some of the more notable changes that did occur with this new MUTC that may affect agencies. One of them is speed limits. So as part of the final rule, the new provision on setting speed limits have been greatly expanded to ensure that practitioners consider all road users. So also not focusing specifically on our vehicles, but also on our pedestrians and bicyclists who are using the road when setting the speed limits. First, it should be noted that the provisions apply only to the non-statutory speed limits. The MUTCD does not govern speed limits set by state or local statute. For speed limits not set by statute, the MUTCD still requires an engineering study to be conducted. However, there's greater emphasis placed on consideration of the site context, including the roadway type, how it functions, as well as the various modes of travel that are using that roadway. The new provisions now recommend a wide range of factors to be considered in the engineering study, including the amount and type of pedestrian and bicycle activity, crash history for all road users, land use around the site, and many other factors such that are listed on the slide. Lastly, it further clarifies the implication and applicability of the 85th percentile speed. So it is a recommended factor in the engineering study, but it's not a required factor. It's just something recommended to take a look at as well. So one of the next changes actually was its own final rule prior to the 11th edition, but has been incorporated. So this is again for the maintaining minimum retroreflectivity of longitudinal pavement markings. So this was final rule was published on August 5th, 2022, which became revision 3 to the 2009 MUTCD. As a result, Federal Highway did incorporate the provisions from that completed rulemaking, which includes provisions regarding having a method to maintain minimum retroreflectivity levels for longitudinal pavement markings on all roadways that are open to public travel with speed limits of 35 miles per hour and greater. They do have optional provisions within this this requirement that define markings that may be excluded from the provision of maintaining minimum retroreflectivity based on conditions such as if adequate ambient light is present at night, the daily volume. So I believe it's optional under 6,000 vehicles per day, as well as the type of markings. The compliance date established by the final rule on pavement marking retroreflectivity remains in effect and is included in Table 1B in the MUTCD 11th edition. And I believe for this, it is September of 2026 is having that method to maintain retroreflectivity. The new MUTCD also includes provisions for the optional use of colored pavements to address specific lane use restrictions and functionality that can provide additional safety and operational efficiency for certain transportation modes. So there are completely new sections provided on the use of green colored pavements that designate exclusive bike lanes, red colored pavements designating for public transit use only, and then they also have purple colored pavement designating lanes for electronic toll collection, which doesn't really affect Iowa. And these new provisions are expected to improve safety and operations on our roadways as they become more common nationally. So one of the provisions that was not incorporated but had been proposed was on changing the normal line width. So they had proposed having a 6-inch longitudinal lane line as the normal width, but they kept it at 4 inches. This was based on comments submitted on that notice of proposed amendments, a review of the relevant research, and the potential beneficial impacts of the recent final rule related to that minimum maintained retroreflectivity that will improve pavement marking visibility. They decided to that changing the width of normal and wide longitudinal lines not be adopted in this edition of the MUTCD, and the existing provisions on the longitudinal marking width from the previous editions of the MUTCD were retained. They did, however, add some additional support provisions to inform practitioners that based on research documented in Federal Highway's wider edge line proven safety countermeasures, 6-inch edge lines can provide a safety benefit over that minimum 4-inch edge lines, such as locations with a history of run-off-the-road crashes. They also included a reference to inform practitioners of the longitudinal marking considerations relevant to driving automation systems. These changes will provide agencies information and flexibility to determine where to use wider longitudinal lines based on data specific to their roadways. For marked crossway walks, the final rule includes a new recommendation that crosswalk markings be installed at locations controlled by traffic control signals, and adds an option to allow the crosswalk to remain unmarked if engineering judgment indicates that the marking is not needed to direct pedestrians to the proper crossing paths. The next change is related to aesthetic surface treatments. So surface treatments that are purely aesthetic do not include retroreflective elements. They do not communicate regulations, guidance, warning, or other information to road users, and do not interfere with or mimic traffic control devices. These aesthetic surface treatments are sometimes referred to as street murals or asphalt art, and might be a single solid color, or their design might include multiple colors. Because these treatments do not intend or are not intended to control traffic, they're generally outside the scope of the MUTCD. Accordingly, the MUTCD does not prohibit them within the roadway right-of-way. Rather, as might be allowed by other federal, state, or local statute regulations or policies, the determination of the accessibility of aesthetic surface treatments on street or highway right-of-way is determined by local or state authorities that have jurisdiction over the roadway. Therefore, the determination as to whether a particular aesthetic surface treatment is acceptable for use in the highway or roadway right-of-way falls outside the scope and provisions of the MUTCD, except to the extent that the treatment might interfere with or mimic a traffic control device. So when the roadway surface treatment does interact with or start to interfere with official traffic control devices, then the MUTCD addresses the interaction to ensure that the integrity of that traffic control device is preserved. As stated earlier, prudent judgment should prevail in any assessment of whether the efficacy of a traffic control device should be compromised by the proximity of something else within the right-of-way. There were quite a few provisions in this new 11th edition, developed with a focus on the needs of our vulnerable road users, our bicyclists, our pedestrians, and those needing additional accessibility or access to transit. New devices and greater clarity are provided to meet those needs. So some of the changes related to accessibility, it improves accessibility for pedestrians in multiple areas, such as improving guidance on locating pedestrian push buttons in proximity to sidewalk curb ramps to help ensure that they're readily available to pedestrians with ambulatory disabilities. Also clarifying detectable edging around obstacles and work zones to provide positive and reaffirming guidance through the workspace. And advanced information about sidewalk closures and alternate pedestrian routes using audible information devices to help those who are vision impaired or have low vision. In addition, the new MUTCD also improves guidance on audible information devices and accessible pedestrian signals, and recommends audible information devices at other pedestrian actuated devices. The MUTCD again adopts the proposed revisions that strengthen the provisions for the protection of vulnerable road users, but as mentioned earlier, the MUTCD is expected to undergo further rulemaking to address PROAG changes once they are adopted by USDOT. The next change was for pedestrian signals. So with the new edition of the MUTCD, the installation of pedestrian signal heads for each marked crosswalk controlled by a traffic control signal is now recommended. Previously, this was a decision based on engineering judgment. In addition, a new option that allows agencies to apply engineering judgment to use pedestrian signal heads under other conditions is also included. These changes are adopted to improve safety for vulnerable road users. A number of commenters did suggest that pedestrian signal heads be required rather than recommended at all signalized intersections, and Federal Highway might revisit this issue in a further rulemaking after further evaluation of the potential implications and benefits under varying contexts, as well as in consideration of the PROAG rulemaking too. And then the final change I'll talk about is related to bicycles. So to address the continually developing area of bicycle transportation, Part 9 of the MUTCD bicycle facilities has been greatly expanded to provide an array of new options for agencies to address bicycle safety and mobility, as well as improve bicycle comfort. Incorporated into the new manual are several devices that were previously under interim approval and now are available for use without special approval. So these include, as I mentioned earlier, that green colored pavement for the bicycle lane applications, bicycle traffic signal faces and associated signs which provide protected movement through signalized intersections, intersection bicycle boxes, which improve the visibility of bicycles, as well as the two-stage turn box, which improves the left turn movement for bicycles, and by reducing weaving conflicts between bicycles and motor vehicles at intersections. A new design for the US bicycle route sign, and optional pavement markings, including markings for separated and buffer separated bike lanes, as well as counterflow bicycle lanes to fill gaps in bicycle lane networks in urban areas. So again, I just went over some of the changes. This is from a longer presentation that was over an hour long. I am not unfortunately able to share the slides, but they will have a recording of that full webinar along with all of the slides, which include some additional changes on the MUTC website, hopefully sometime in the next week or so. They also have a webinar that will be publicly available on March 28th, so a week from tomorrow, specific to some of the changes for those vulnerable road users on accessibility, pedestrians, and bicyclists. Registration is not open yet, but should be open hopefully in the next day or so, and is again available on the MUTCD website. If you want to learn a little bit more about other changes as well, available on the MUTCD website currently, they have a markup, the red line version of the changes from the previous edition. So red line of anything that was crossed out, and then blue of anything that's new. That's just for the text, not any of the tables or figures. They also have a supplementary table of dispositions for the final rule. So with that, it has what they had proposed to be changed in the notice of proposed amendments, and then what the actual final change was. And then hopefully sometime in the next month or so, they will also have a slideshow of the major changes like they've had in previous editions. So the state's adoption, I saw the question here. Iowa plans to adopt it. I believe they plan to go through the rulemaking sometime next spring or summer to adopt it into Iowa code. So it will be before that January of 2026 when it is required. But they have not set a specific date as well. If you do have any specific questions related to the MUTCD, feel free to reach out to me. I might not be able to answer them or give you an exact interpretation, but I can always go up to our headquarters and get a final interpretation for you. Well, does anyone have any questions? And I unfortunately cannot share the slides from today, but they will have a recording of the webinar with the full set of slides. So it was an hour-long webinar and then 30 minutes of questions that should be on the MUTCD website in the hopefully next week or so.
Okay, well, if there's not any other questions, thank you, Nicole. That was very informative. Next, we have Millie, who's going to talk about the state bicycle database.
Good morning. I was going to wait until the end of my presentation to share with the group about the Iowa Bicycle Summit, but just to follow on what Nicole was talking about, we are working with the Iowa Bicycle Coalition to once again host the Iowa Bike Summit. It is going to be in the fall. August. Right now it's slated to be August 3rd in Council Bluffs. And we are going to have, and we're working to have a workshop related to all those changes for bicyclists in the MUTCD. So just look for the agenda. We should have an agenda ready for this summer for people to sign up for register for the summit and for that workshop. So what I'm here to present today is about the bicycle facility database. This is some data that we receive mostly from the MPOs and the RPAs to update our database. We use this database for the bicycle map, for generate the interactive bike map, and also for our complete street policy. You should have received a copy of that metadata and documentation along with the agenda when Travis sent it a few days ago. And I want to thank the corridor, Intercog, Des Moines MPO, ACIA, MAPA, and RPAs 1, 3, 10, and 13 for helping us to develop this database, which pretty much outlines the standards and guidelines for reporting. And the reasoning, and I have explained this before, you know, each MPO and each RPA kind of have their own fields, and I get all this information, and then I have to sort off through, you know, 27 different agencies. So this is kind of pretty much to help us, me, to enter your data into our database, and for you to know what exactly, you know, you would need to be reporting. Okay. So, you know, the fields on that database is the name, obviously, you know, the name of the trail. The description is pretty much, there's some trails that do not have, or bicycle facilities that do not have a name. For example, you know, you don't name a bike lane, but the description will be where that bike lane is. You know, the bike lane, this is a bike lane, it's on 6th Street, for example. There is, you know, status, facility type, and all the usuals, the surface and the type and the width. If there is, you know, at first we were kind of doing, you know, all these uses, but right now the group decided, you know, equestrian skiing and snowmobiling are most of the other types besides, you know, pedestrians and bicyclists and all the other active transportation users on the trails. Something that is new that we did not have before, we have, you know, what year was constructed, but what year was rehabilitated was added to the list. And then usually we had the owner name, but not the maintenance name. You know, there's some areas in the state where maybe the county is, you know, the owner of the trail or the facility, but somebody else maintains that facility. So that was something that was added. And we don't have a US bicycle route, which is what that means, USBR. But once we start developing those, is something that we would like to add to this list. So basically each one of those fields in this documentation will tell you, you know, what data type it is, if it is a text, you know, how long it should be, if there's drop down options, you know, like for example, status, you know, close, open, propose, all that is described in that documentation. It also indicates, oh, sorry, I just lost exactly where I was going. So yeah, the field description will have the tables with the drop-down information. And it also has the definitions for what type of bicycle facilities are. These definitions might change a little bit. I am taking those from the draft AASHTO bike guide. I am part of the AASHTO committee who develops this guide. So you're getting a preview of what we have there right now. The bike guide currently is in AASHTO publications and is expected to come out this summer. So we'll see, you know, if there are differences in these definitions, and I will update as it fits. And then we wanted to provide an example of, you know, what that facility actually looks like. So are there questions about this? This is in a draft. It's coming out of your subcommittee of all those MPOs and RPAs that I talked before. If do you have questions about these comments? No comments, no questions. If you have questions or comments and you don't want to kind of like, you know, mention them right now, just you can always send me an email. and if, you know, if I don't get email, let's see, I it was not have a deadline for it, but if there's no comments, this is the information and the formatting that we would like to receive your updates for us to update the database. Hearing none. Oh, is there a question? Travis, can you help me with a question? Oh, Gina, go ahead.
All right, just checking because maybe I missed it. I guess what are the expectations for the other MPOs and RPAs who weren't part of the original group?
Well, I think the expectations for all the 27 agencies is to, these are the fields that we will require.
Okay.
And the formatting for it. And this is something actually, and I forgot to mention that, we started these, the way that this is formatted or the way that the metadata is from a national bikeway facility efforts that are going now nationally. It's a national database. So we took some of that from there and tried to kind of narrow it down to what it will be good in Iowa, or what is acceptable in here. So we did not start from scratch. This is a template that it comes from the national database.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question. All right, so again, you know, send me any questions if you have or comments. So next, I wanted to talk about what has been in the legislature. The second funnel was last Friday, the 15th, March 15th. So there is a bill that talks about pedestrians. So right now in the code, a pedestrian means a person afoot. So this next House File 2568, and it has successors to all these other ones, which is always interesting to me that we start with a number and we have to follow all these other numbers that come along with it, which makes it a little bit harder sometimes. So the new proposed definition will be a pedestrian means a person afoot or a person using a pedestrian conveyance. So what is a pedestrian conveyance? Means any human powered device, and it could be, you know, that it's not limited to only all these, but you know, that it's on a wheelchair, is pushing a stroller, is on a skateboard, scooter, or a similar device. Previously, a person on a wheelchair was not a person afoot, and it was not covered under the Iowa code. It was one of those things that, yeah, could be, but not could be, but it was not really specific. A pedestrian conveyance also includes electrical personal assisted mobility devices, your, you know, scooters, and any other person that moves or standing on the device, which, you know, those electric scooters that you see people using for active transportation. The key is that electric motor cannot produce more than 750 watts, which is 20 miles per hour, 1 horsepower. And a pedestrian conveyance does not include a bicycle. But the same bill is saying, is adding to another code, 321, 327. It's adding a person riding a bicycle crossing the roadway, having the same, oh my God, the same rights as a pedestrian on the right of way. Again, we have, you know, side paths, widening sidewalks that are trails. We consider part of a trail, and the bicyclist really did not have any rights if getting hit by a motor vehicle. And then just to make it clear, or no, I don't know, clear or more confusing, the vehicle does not include one of those e-bikes. It still does not include it, but includes the rights of those using e-bikes on the crosswalk. Again, this bill passed the second funnel, still alive. It is not been it's not been signed yet, but as soon as some of these happens, if it happens, I will let Travis know so he can send you the information. Another bill that it is past the second funnel is Senate File 2115. Currently, under 321-281, there is a actions against bicyclists, protects bicyclists from motor vehicles getting too close or throwing things at bicyclists. It's a simple misdemeanor with a $250 fine. So what this bill is proposing is not changing what is in the, like the protections that the bicyclists have right now, but it is about the penalties. So a violation causing a serious injury, the fine is $500 or suspension of the driver's license for 90 days or both. A violation for causing death is a fine of $1,000 or suspension for no more than 180 days or both. So again, these two bills pass the second funnel, and we'll know more about if they get all the way through and incorporated into the code. Any questions about any of these bills? Okay, moving on. I don't see any on the chat. And the last thing I wanted to share with you, currently this week, there is a National Bike Summit in Washington, D.C. And this has happened in previous year, but there is a big push this year to get Make Every Ride Count. And if you go to either, go hashtag Every Ride Count or Love to Ride USA, you will see a way that bicyclists will be able to get count for the Bicycle Month Challenge that is in May. Just wanted to pass that along. And I believe that's all I have, if you don't have any questions.
Okay, are there any other questions for Millie? I saw one in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see that.
The question was, would this definition bar someone from using an electric scooter from riding in the street?
Well, electric scooters, you're talking about, can that question be a little bit, are you talking about those standing scooters?
Yeah,
Class
like
A?
if someone riding a electric scooter that's within that definition of a pedestrian, if that makes them a pedestrian, would that prevent them from riding in the street? And the same with a bike.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, Caleb, because the answer is no. Because right now, the low speed electric bicycles is part of the definition of a bicycle. So they're considered to be a bicycle and be able to go where the bicycles ride. The thing was that the bicycles were not protected on the crosswalks. So they're kind of letting, like bicycles will be, not now, once when the bills pass, then both bicycles and low speed e-bikes are considered to be same as a bicycle, class 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, sweet, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Millie. Okay, so I'm going to present now just some survey results. So as a lot of you know, as I started, I sent out a couple surveys. So I'm going to kind of go through these and kind of my thought processes with them. When I was starting, I had originally thought that I would want to do some sort of introductory phone call to each of the directors or managers within the agencies, but given the fact that we have almost 30, I realized that that could have taken quite a bit of time. So what I started with was executive director and manager survey. Can you guys see my slides, by the way? So anyway,
Yep,
I
we can see
received
'em.
responses from 16 of 27 agencies, just asking kind of a series of just very broad questions. Um, one of the questions I asked was just if they have the necessary resources, and all did respond yes to perform all the MPO and RPA functions. So that was, obviously a nice thing to hear. Um, all responded affirmatively to having a good and positive relationship with Iowa DOT. And some went a little bit further and said that they wish that they could actually have Iowa DOT present to their board or committee about once a year. So that was really nice to hear. Uh, for some of our agencies, kind of the biggest issue that I was able to kind of find was that eight agencies in particular said that staff retention and turnover was a major issue. So we're kind of working through that to make sure that all of our planning deliverables are done on time and to the level that we need. Obviously, is an important thing going forward. One of the things that we asked for was whether or not there were additional things that could be beneficial to whether that be managers or whether that be planners. And the most common one was in-person trainings, whether that be on MPO, RPA functions, ADA requirements, bike ped related items, things like that. So that is something that we're kind of looking more into now. Collaboration with ICEA, the County Engineers Association. In my previous role as a planner in the RPA, I know that ICEA controlled the TPMS system, and I've heard this a lot in my various outreach to the various agencies. So I know that working with them and providing more training on kind of the things that they do is obviously going to be of great importance moving forward. And then some support for expanded minimum standards on board and committee structures. I know that some of the rules can be a little nebulous or maybe not defined as much, especially for RPA committees, whether that be transit officials, economic development, public health, resource committees like environmental type things. So that's kind of something we looked at. But the main thing based upon this was that I knew that we wanted to do a broader survey related to quarterly meetings because this is kind of the main outlet that we have to talk to you, all of the MPOs and RPAs throughout the state, whether you're the biggest MPO or the smallest RPA, kind of everyone in between. So then the other thing was to examine the relationship just kind of between systems planning, district planners, and things like that. One big thing is that we want to stress is that there are a lot of times where our district planners are kind of the liaison to us and vice versa. So just making sure that they're included in all of our correspondence that we have. Sometimes it's good to go to them first and then kind of come to us in second, things like that. But just kind of examining that relationship and kind of determining what maybe the best protocol is moving forward. So then, like I said, based upon just kind of that initial feedback from directors and managers, we decided to go forward with a quarterly meeting survey for all MPO and RPA staff. So this was pretty wide encompassing, and I think we got quite a few responses. So I'm just going to kind of go into kind of who and what and kind of the things that were talked about. 35 responses were received in our quarterly meeting survey. 17 were MPO representatives and 18 were RPA representatives, so pretty decent mix. The largest number was obviously RPA transportation planners in general, managers with 9 and directors with 7, and then kind of some other data, admin, finance, and other representatives. So I would say it was a pretty good mix or reflection of who our staff are. Some of the initial takeaways that I took from this survey were that there were mixed opinions on kind of how and to what degree. We have mixed meeting, hybrid meetings, in-person, virtual, things like that. Sometimes too little staff or determining which staff to bring could be an issue based upon our own capabilities here at the DOT. Based on our meeting space, we have limited to 1 per MPO and 1 per RPA in the past. Quarterly meetings can be a great forum to provide training We've heard this a lot in all of our outreach since I've been here, but also before I got here. All respondents find agenda items at least relevant part of the time in these meetings. And then 20 plus participants found that most or all agenda items were relevant. So that's a really good start, I would say, just to make sure that as we refine these meetings, as the needs of these MPOs and RPAs might change with the infrastructure bill and various other things, just making sure that these stats stay kind of where they're at is good. 25 or 27 of 35 participants found the current meeting length adequate. We usually meet 4 to 5 hours or so. And then 30 participants stated that quarterly meetings are a good forum for training opportunities. We've heard this a lot. So, and this will be, and you'll hear about this a little more in future slides. So just kind of a brief overview as to kind of what people prefer or respondents prefer in terms of kind of how and where we meet. As you can see from meeting format, it was kind of all over the board, but for the most part, it's a mix and hybrid were kind of the two predominant answers. 7 respondents prefer in-person only, and then 4 prefer virtual only. In terms of meeting location, 7 responded basically we had 28 responses that somewhere in central Iowa, 21 said Ames, and then 7 said a rotation of cities throughout the region. Meeting participants basically is which staff to bring. I think the big thing to get out of this one was that sometimes determining which staff could come to meetings was somewhat of an issue. Mostly whether that be just a wide range of topics that maybe didn't quite jive together, or just the limitation that either there wasn't enough staff capable of coming, or we had the 1 person per MPO, 1 person per RPA limit. In terms of like agenda items and meeting length, we asked a question of whether agenda items are relevant to their work. All responses were at least sometimes, so that was nice. 24 were usually or always. And then, like I said, the current 5-hour meeting length, for the most part, 27% or 27 respondents out of 35 said it was adequate. In terms of collaborating with your peers, we asked the question, what value have you found in presentations from peer agencies during meetings? This was kind of all over the place, but for the most part, 11 responses were that they took an item from a quarterly meeting and wound up implementing it, or it wound up inspiring something else for their agencies. That's a really positive sign. 13 responses were that presentations are informative, but they really didn't do anything with them, or it didn't really like inspire or lead anything new within their agency. And then six people responded that they often don't relate. And we offered an other option there just to kind of see kind of maybe why that is. And some of that is just kind of an urban-rural divide, which is kind of an issue that we obviously take note of, but can kind of be difficult too. I mean, since these meetings are for MPOs and RPAs at the same time. We continued the collaboration aspect within this survey of whether or not there'd be value in large MPO, small MPO, RPA type working groups scheduled during or around MPO RPA quarterly meetings. 14 said yes and 4 said no, and then 17 said unsure. So I think that's just something where a proposal would probably have to come out with a little more detail to determine for sure, yes, this would be a good idea. What topics would be beneficial for a working group? The largest ones were for MPO and RPA planners, just to be able to network with their own counterparts throughout the state. And I know that in my previous role, I had expressed the ability to do that. There was another one, the other top bar here, as you can see for question 17, was agencies undergoing similar planning efforts. With the bipartisan infrastructure law, I know that there's a lot of new things that MPOs and RPAs are doing, and some of these things are, some of these requirements are so new, and the timelines are so short, that having people to kind of rely upon or just lean on to ask, how are you guys doing this? So I think those are kind of the two big things that maybe a working group type setting would be. And then just some other suggested topics for peer presentations at quarterly meetings. We're always soliciting these ideas, by the way. So if you didn't answer this question in the quarterly meeting, please always reach out to me if you have an idea. But some of the big ones were federal discretionary grants, census data and how to utilize it. The overall RPA responsibilities, and I would include MPOs in here too, whether that be LRTPs, TIPs, TPWPs, and then the STBG allocation process. We've received a lot of requests for peer presentations and trainings on those. The other big one is TPMS. I think that's we're hearing you loud and clear that continued and often TPMS training, outreach, resources, things like that, making sure that you're able to utilize that in the best way possible while you're doing your tips and when you're managing it throughout the year. State performance targets in relation to Vision Zero and the innovative solutions for non-vehicular transportation. Just general presentations of how your MPOs and RPAs have found ways to kind of advance these movements kind of within the field. So then we asked what groups should have working groups created or at least considered. Bike ped, ADA, sustainability, peer exchanges. I think that's a really good opportunity here. TIP and programming. I think that's another one. Complete Streets, GIS, like kind of research and innovative trends. And then, like I said a couple slides ago, Safe Streets for All. I know that's a real common one right now. In addition to roadway safety, performance measures, and things like that. So I think that how we exactly do these, I'm not sure, but seeing these suggestions kind of told us that we at least need to pursue this within the next year or so. So then kind of the next component of our survey was the idea of potentially having a multi-day event, which to what extent that would be, we're not quite sure yet, whether that would be like a full-on summit or whether it just be 2 days of meetings or whether just a series of work groups and trainings be scheduled a day before or day after or during a quarterly meeting. The main item, though, that if there was a multi-day event would be planning guidance for everything required. We did receive a lot of comments related to the fact that there's just a lot of new staff. And a lot of times, especially at an RPA, when you're doing, 15% transportation planning and 30% community development and, kind of being all over the place, it can be hard to learn all these requirements on the fly. So having a training option was something that we've heard loud and clear through this process. Presentations related to other DOT items, just whether that be local systems, whether that be, like we had today with, or like we're going to have today with like the rail team, things like that. But yeah, I think that as you can see on the far right, the other big one was just being able to network. I think while a lot of agencies might have different things going on, a lot of it is still the same, and kind of being able to utilize this forum that we have just to allow more networking, more cohesion, or just more kind of more of a forum to provide advice or get feedback as to kind of what's going on throughout the state. So related to that, we kind of asked if their agency would send all relative staff to a multi-day event. I think there's a lot of maybes here as to kind of how and what the format would be. But yes, received 13 votes and maybe received 19. No one said no. So that was nice to see that there's at least the willingness to understand that if we did try this, that there would be a willingness to participate. We asked if a multi-day event for all relevant staff would be of more benefit than the existing three in-person quarterly meetings. As you can see, most said no or unsure. So I think what we heard here is that even if we do a multi-day event, we would still want to do at least one more in-person meeting throughout the year, potentially 2. If a multi-day MPO or RPO event was held in person, our agency would want all the other meetings throughout the year to be virtual, kind of going off that last one. Yes was 10 and probably was 12. And we do seem to have not a large amount, but maybe a loud amount who really does value these in-person meetings and would at least want at least one more per out the year, even if we did do a multi-day event. So kind of some final takeaways and discussion. I really want to hear your feedback here. I know there's that was a lot of data there, but I really appreciated everyone who did fill out that survey. But the big thing, like I said, is a need or desire for more training exists, whether it be planning requirements, DOT funding programs, and discretionary grants in particular. I think between new staff and between new requirements, new funding sources, I think that that's really important. Peer networking opportunities. Half of participants expressed a value in having a working group or using the quarterly meeting structure to host an already existing or already thriving working group. And then just there's general openness to a multi-day event, but what I've gathered is that we would need to do a few more discussion points or have a little more feedback on that before we kind of decide what we did. Some ideas that we had was collaboration with already existing ICOG event. We haven't really done any research into that. We know that they do meet in May for staff members. And if there was a willingness or an ability to maybe utilize that just as a way to limit the number of trips that some of our outlying areas have to make to central Iowa. And then training of requiring elements would need to be included. And we've heard that a lot, that like I've said multiple times already, just training on TPWPs, LRTPs, PTPs, public participation plans and things like that. So with that, I really would just love to hear some discussion points from you, honestly, and kind of what you guys' opinions are on this idea related to having a multi-day event, but also the need for working groups and things like that. I see Gina has her hand raised.
So I think appreciate Travis, that you've pulled everything together and kind of consolidated and gotten our feedback. I know in Illinois we do about a day and a half conference, and it is a good opportunity for staff to intermingle more than just sitting, in a presentation, at maybe the quarterly meetings. Those are usually pretty jam-packed, and there isn't that networking opportunity as much as you would have at a conference setting. So I think, if not every year, maybe it could be every other year, because I do know it takes some effort to get something pulled together. So that's just my feedback.
Okay. We received a comment from Danny Briggs. I think the conference is a fantastic idea. When it comes to RPA staff, we were really pulled in a lot of different directions, and there wasn't a lot of guidance on how to do plans. Yeah, we received that comment a lot throughout surveying. I think that for sure what we at a base level, kind of something that we've discussed was, even if we only had a one-day meeting, maybe if we could find a venue in Ames where there was 2 meeting rooms, where a quarterly meeting could be going on in one room, and then in the other room there would just be a series of trainings or presentations on LRTP creation or TIP creation or TPMS or things like that. Would that be beneficial?
Travis, this is Tammy from RPA 13. I would say I don't find that very beneficial, because we would again be divided and need to be at both. So I think they need to be separate.
Okay. We've seen another comment. I've always appreciated the existing formats and meeting schedules. Keeping the online systems playing resource guides has been very helpful. That's good to hear.
This is Michelle Boston from Simcoe, and I know Nicole is on here right now too, Nicole Moore, but she is the current chair of ICOG and I'm the vice chair. So I guess I'll kind of maybe, and Nicole can jump in if she wants to. There might be some other ICOG directors on here as well, but I think working something in with our staff retreat, either as, a session or two during it, or maybe the day before or something like that, is a good idea, just because everyone's kind of traveling that way anyhow. So I would be open to that idea, but we'll see what the other members say. Nicole, I guess you nod yes or no.
Yeah, we have talked about that as we're planning for the staff retreat, and we do have a transportation element in there. But if we need to expand it on, you know, like bump out sessions for DOT to do some training during that time with that is definitely a good option. You know, it gives us those options to work out, you know, for just the transportation side, the directors look at, you know, what their needs are when sending them too. So yeah, Travis, reach out. We'll do what we can.
How well attended is that event?
Very. I mean, really,
Yeah.
in the past. If there is an element in there, the transportation directors or the executive directors look at, it could be a planner, it could be you know, could be a transportation side, could be an accounting or a bookkeeper side. So what we look at what our needs are kind of every year as we're planning that staff retreat. So, and I think Garrett is planning on speaking at the retreat this year. So
Yeah, Gina invited me to come talk about the NEVI program, so I'll be there
Yeah.
for that.
So
I think
yeah,
our
we could-
goal is always to send 2 people from each cog. So, you know, I think at minimum, all the cogs, do all the cogs at least have an RPA? No, that's not necessarily true. Either an MPO or an RPA.
Right.
I would
right.
say, yeah.
And some of the lines may not line up completely, but
Yeah.
they generally follow.
Yeah, but you know, if you have ideas, reach out to us. Travis, reach out to me, or Michelle, and we can, you know, we can talk about it. We have monthly board meetings for ICOG that we can discuss it with you guys as well. I mean, we try to get you guys there during those time too. So, yeah, we can definitely provide some more opportunities for transportation training throughout.
Okay. There's a couple other comments. The only concern that Lindsay had was that a multi-day conference would have a potential financial burden for MPOs and RPAs. Otherwise, generally good idea. Would there be a financial burden for any of your MPOs or RPAs if there was, say, a 2-day event in Ames and you had to bring 3 planners with you?
No.
I don't think so, not for Simcoe.
I think depending on how many staff, we just need to budget for it. So if we know it's happening, we would just put it in our funding of our work program and
Yep.
travel
Okay.
budget.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you guys have any other general feedback? I think we've kind of thrown a lot at you here. And I think the big thing, like I said, that we heard was just more training in general, whether that be in a multi-day event or whether that just be things that we can provide even via webinar and things like that. Would you guys prefer if we just did like webinars throughout the year compared to a multi-day event or things like that?
I think sometimes the webinars are easier for us to schedule in, especially when we're short staffed and spread thin. And I always will throw at you that we're 3 states, so we get spread even thinner. And so traveling to Ames for us, you know, takes 3 hours. And so one direction. So, you know, I think we always kind of appreciate the opportunity to be able to participate virtually, but I also see the importance of meeting face to face. So I'm always a little kind of torn with that. I feel I could go either way.
Yeah, and I would say just personally, it's definitely a lot easier for me to get sidetracked in a webinar. Whereas if I'm actually there in person, I can focus on the content, and then having some of those discussions, you know, following up to are definitely beneficial.
Travis, the other
Travis,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay.
No, you go.
So, and I've been around for a very long long time now. But a long time ago, I know we did, I think it was through, it's through Federal Highway, maybe it was NHI class. It was like MPO 101 class that we held. And we haven't done that, I don't think, in a long time. And I think when we did it, I mean, even though it was MPO focused, maybe we had MPO and RPAs there. And that class was really well attended, I remember, and really informational. And you know, just thinking back in the day when I was kind of starting my career, things like that were really informative and helpful. To kind of just have that I don't know, just basic information starting out.
Mhm. Did you have something to say, Dylan?
Yeah, I like what Michelle just said too, because I attended those when I was starting out, and I thought that was very helpful. Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, I like the feedback and the conversation, and whether it's a multi-day conference or whatever, I'm pretty impartial to that. What I was going to say is something you had on your screen before was kind of the bigger MPOs or smaller MPOs, and just I find value in that and being able to talk to peers that are a little more our size. At a director level and so forth. So if there's an opportunity to do things like that, obviously we can do that on our own, but I find value in that. And just real quick on the ICOG conversation, just as long as we're able to participate, because we are not a COG and we're probably the one that's unique in that, but ICOG does meet in our office. So if they just let us crash the meetings once in a while, if that's the direction we go, happy to do that as well.
Dylan, I think you guys are on our list, so definitely.
Awesome. Is there any other feedback or general ideas here? I think we can have a few different kind of trains of thought, at least to kind of what to pursue. But like I said, this conversation doesn't have to stop at this meeting, and I would prefer it not. But I think that we've learned a lot here. So is there any other last minute items before we go to a break?
This is Gina. I just went to the Federal Highway Administration does have a capacity building website. It does have a lot of focus on MPOs, but in that there's a resource page that has transportation planning, and so they have a series of webinars that I know I've suggested that my staff look through, and certainly having it reinforced in a actual training, I think would be helpful.
Mhm.
And I'll put the link in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah. We did receive a couple comments that it's easy to get sidetracked during webinars. So I do see some value. I do see that there is a willingness to have some in-person trainings there for sure. So if that was a resource, Gina, that would actually be kind of a interesting way to kind of get that started. Okay, is there any other comments or questions or related to this topic?
Travis, it looks like ampo.org has some spring 2024 courses coming up as part of their AMPO, the MPO Institute. One of those is MPO 101. There's also one on federal funding, and there's one other course, I guess, for anyone that's not a member of AMPO. We just joined, I think, last year, and we've found incredible value in being part of that organization.
Yeah, I know when I was at MAPA, I went to AMPO last year, and that was a very, very good, thorough conference. So I'll definitely take a look at their website too. So, okay, I think if there's not any other comments or questions, I think what we'll do is we'll take a break until 10:20. So we'll start Des Moines MPO's presentation about 10 minutes early. So if everyone could just be back here by 10:20, we'll be good. So thank you. Okay, it's 10:20. So our next presentation is on data bicycle software for trail pavement data processing. Z Chen with the Des Moines MPO. He's gonna start us off here.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Thanks for the opportunity for us to present about our data bike and the data bike software. So as many of you may know, the Des Moines area MPO has a data bike that we use to collect trail pavement condition for the last several years. So recently we have worked with interns at Iowa State University to develop software to better help us with our trail data pavement processing. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Enya and his team at ISU to talk a bit more about our data the software that they are working on. Yep. Enya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Inya Lenanya, research scientist at Institute for Transportation at Iowa State. Let me my colleague was having issue trying to join the meeting, so I'll just share.
Yeah.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's not on the full presentation mode. Yep, there we go. Yep.
All right. So like she mentioned, the plan is well, kind of the beginning phases of a trail management program, and with that you will need to have data collection and inventory. And so what we've tried to do is come up with a framework that will allow us to collect, do the condition assessment on paved trails. And so here we have a framework that will allow us to collect surface roughness, and in addition to that, also to enable us to quantify the distresses on the trails. So being able to come up with actual numbers for the cracks and all kinds of distresses that are on the trails. So this is what this project is about, and so we've been working on this for some time, and we are at the implementation stage. So with that, I'll hand over to my colleague. He will introduce himself, and we'll see you at the end of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Inia. Hello, everyone. My name is Zia, and I'm a PhD student at Iowa State University. And I've been working in this project as graduate research assistant. So the data bike that we have been that was introduced by Des Moines MPO, it has two major components. Is like one is iPhone, which has a accelerometer sensor, and a GoPro camera that collects imageries while traveling at the riding speed. And these are the two major components that collects full trail width imageries, the GoPro camera, which is a high resolution camera. And there's in iPhone, which is equipped with a sensor log app that can collect accelerometer readings, gyroscope readings, and magnetometer reading, which will then be analyzed to estimate the trail smoothness. And to verify the roughness estimates from the data bike, we tried to use a reference profiler, which is a walking profiler typically used to calibrate the inertial profiler measurements. So this is one of the devices that we have used to collect the data on the selected sites. And this device will be actually used to verify the measurements from the data bike. And this walking profiler is expected to have a really high accuracy measurements based on the walking speed. So here's the overall workflow for this project. We have GoPro photos that we can get that we will annotate and filter and try to train a computer vision model. And from that, we'll try to get the surface distresses from the images. And from the iPhone sensor data, we will develop a mathematical model that can measure the roughness index of the surface. And we'll verify those measurements using our walking profiler. And when we have a roughness index and the distance detection, we'll try to combine these two to get a trail condition index. So the data collection program, we choose 8 sites in Des Moines, mainly ranging from very good to very poor. And all these sites are 0.3 mile long. We selected 4 asphalt sites and 4 concrete sites. And we mark those sites, as you can see in the images. And in these control sites, we collected data with the data bike and the walking profiler. And we did multiple runs on these sites to also analyze the repeatability of the data. And we collected this data in both in 2022 and 2023. So based on the measurements, we try to develop a roughness index for the trails. So here's the background. Typically, we have seen International Roughness Index, which is IRI, that is widely accepted for pavement condition evaluation. And here for measuring IRI, we have accelerometer data, and based on that, we create an elevation profile, and we simulate a quarter car to measure the International Roughness Index. But for the trails, it's going to be a bit different because we collected our data with the bicycle. So we'd like to simulate a bicycle instead of a quarter car to measure the roughness index. And we call it bicycle roughness index or trail roughness index. So the objective is to employ and calibrate a bicycle-based algorithm for roughness measurements. And we will try to verify these measurements with a reference system, which is a walking profiler. And from the walking profiler measurements, we used ProVal software to calculate our roughness indexes, IRI. This is just to show how we calculate IRI for our reference system. And when we, from our mathematical model, when we estimated the roughness measurements from the data bike, we compared with the walking profiler, and we have found some good agreement between these two. As you can see from the bar chart, the numbers are quite close to each other. And also for the correlation, we have a really high correlation for the asphalt sites. So these graphs are only shown for the asphalt sites, and about 0.79% of correlation between the bicycle-based roughness index, which we are calling BRI, and from the IRI that we got from the walking profiler. This graph shows the correlation between the for the PCC trail, concrete surface trail. Here we have multiple runs. We also try to compare the runs, the normal runs and the reverse runs as well. And we have found quite good agreement between these two numbers on the PCC as well. The correlation is a bit low compared to AC, but it's still very satisfactory between the walking profiler and the bicycle. And and for the same control sites, we compared our results in 2023 as well. And the correlation was still good between the walking profiler and data bike. That means the data bike based IRI can be effectively used to measure the surface roughness of the trail. And therefore we employed our framework on network level, and we can see the consistency between the measurements over the years. We tried to we tried to look at the numbers from 2020 to 2022, and we can see the road condition is the numbers that we are getting is consistent year to year, and this will help us to get a insight on the deterioration of these trails as well. So this is from a snapshot from the network level deployment of our framework. The next phase is vision-based condition assessment, and from the images, we can manually assess those distresses or measure those distresses. And now in this study, we are trying to use automated assessment using deep learning based computer vision models. And there are multiple tasks that we can use to do that. And we used an instance segmentation model for our application, where we can segment and classify the surface distresses, uh, uh, and distresses effectively. So our objective is to employ a state-of-the-art computer vision model that can localize, classify, and segment the trail distresses. And we also want to quantify those distresses to allow for comprehensive assessment that will allow us to calculate the trail condition index. Here's the overall workflow for distress quantification. First, there's a laborious process for training the model, and for that we need to annotate the images. And also we identified and proposed some distress types on the trails, and we annotate those ground truths, and we train our model. And we did some hyperparameter tuning and did some modification to the model architecture to improve the model performance. And then we also had to employ a extensive quantification algorithm to get the actual length or extent of the distresses from the images. So initially we did not find any standardized guidelines in the literature that proposed different distresses on the trails. So we looked at the imageries that we had on the network level, and we found the most occurring distresses, which mostly align with the pavement distresses as well. We proposed 8 types of distress classes from the images. And the first one is interconnected cracking. This kind of cracking is mainly can be defined as the multiple longitudinal crack, which are connected by transverse cracks. We call it interconnected cracking, and this kind of cracking can only occur on the asphalt surfaces. And then we have longitudinal crack, which is parallel to the walking direction. And we also proposed another class, which is sealed longitudinal crack, the longitudinal crack that were treated or sealed. And transverse crack, which is perpendicular to the walking direction on the trail surface. And these are 4 types of distresses. And here we can see 4 more. In the first image, we can see interconnected cracking, a large one, and along with it, we have a pothole. So we have pothole as the number 5, and we are detecting patching as well on trail surfaces, and we are getting the transverse joint from the PCC surface, which is only specific in the PCC surface, and spalling on the transverse joints. So in total, we have these 8 types of distresses. So we annotated these 8 types of distresses and assign a class. By annotating, I mean we draw a closely aligned polygon around these distresses, and then we assign a class to each of these polygons, and we use this data to train our model. And we annotated around 5,000 images, and out of that we used 70% for training the model and 30% for validating the model. And we can see a typical architecture of the model that we have trained. It typically follows the Maskar CNN architecture for instance segmentation, which is a state-of-the-art model for this kind of tasks. And we trained our model for 80,000 iterations to refine the model prediction and performance. It required us 16 hours to train the model, and we used transfer learning to train our model. So I wanted to show some prediction from our model by surface. First, we want to look at the prediction on the PCC surface. As you can see on the left, we have it was found to be robust on the PCC surface in localizing and detecting these transverse joint very effectively. So the performance is really good on transverse joints, and we can see on the right image we have multiple longitudinal cracks and also transverse joints. And we also segmented the non-trail surface from the images. We call it object. So that helps us to only segment the trail surface out of the whole imageries. And here's some more prediction. We have seen that while riding, some images can be skewed. So we wanted to see the model performance on the skewed images as well. Even though the transverse joint is a bit skewed, the model was able to identify those correctly on the left. On the right image, we can see the model is very good on the small distresses like spalling to capture them from the images and on the joint. And it was really good on that as well. And we also wanted to, there will be trail images that there will be shadows while collecting these images. So we also wanted to verify the model's performance on the shadowed images as well. As you can see on the left, we have a transverse joint that was detected even though it was covered with shadow, the adjacent trees. And also in shadow on the right, we can see the spalling and transverse joints both were adequately identified by the model in the shadowed images as well. So here are some more examples where we can see multiple transverse joints on the left that was detected, and spalling on the transverse joint that was detected well. And on the right, we try to show if there's a multiple longitudinal crack or transverse joint. The model was pretty good on that as well. So this is some examples from the model prediction on the PCC surface. And I wanted to show some on the AC surface as well. We can see on the left, the pothole was identified correctly. And on the right, we can see the multiple longitudinal crack that was detected on the AC surface. And you can see the masks that it created. It pretty precise. And we have a box to capture the extent of these cracks, and it was classified as well. And here's an example of a crack which is far located from the images. Like the model was good on that as well. It identified the transverse crack on the left, even though it was far located on the images. And on the right, we can see another one. We have a longitudinal crack that is very well visible, but the transverse crack, it was hardly visible, but the model captured the transverse crack as well. And some example of pedestrians on the roads. It can segment the pedestrian as well, and also it can detect if there were any distresses as well. This picture was taken during our data collection for the control sites, and we can see it segmented the pedestrian as well as it detected the transverse joint on that image as well. And we proposed a distress type, which is seal longitudinal cracks, that will help us identify those locations that was treated and need no maintenance. And so we can see on the left image, we have two types of crack. One was sealed and another was not sealed. So it correctly classified those longitudinal cracks as non-sealed and sealed longitudinal crack. And on the right, we can see another sealed longitudinal crack that was detected on the both side. We can see both sealed longitudinal crack was identified correctly by the model. Here's the model performance on heavily cracked areas, and we can see if there are multiple cracks or different types like interconnected cracks, longitudinal crack. It was really good on capturing most of the cracks. And so there on the right, we can see some overlaps of the cracks as well, which we filtered using a filtering algorithm where same location cannot be detected twice. So that's how we addressed the overlapping problem of the model's prediction. But the performance on the heavily cracked areas were really good from the model. And here's some example of the model's prediction on good pavement condition where there were no surface cracks or distresses on both AC and PCC surface. And there are some limitation, as I discussed, like due to the surface texture on the PCC surface, the model identified this area as interconnected crack, which is actually a good surface. So and on the right, we can see multiple overlaps of overlaps of the prediction. So we based on a filtering algorithm, we filtered those which were double counting the distresses. And some limitation where joints which is far away and hardly be seen with eyes. I mean, it was not detected by the model. And some example of on the right, we can see if a joint was captured and was captured like in a distorted way, the joint will be detected as two, as you can see on it, because in the middle it was cropped, and it was so it detected this single joint as two joints. So here, these are some limitations that we have found from the model's performance. And the next phase is distress quantification from the GoPro images. This to uh, to quantify distresses, typically we would want a top view or overhead aerial images that would give us the true distance of the cracks or distresses. But on the right, in our case, we have GoPro images, which are wide angle, and these are oblique view images. So we needed to go through an extensive processing of the model prediction to get the actual length or extent of the distresses. And the methodology followed a experimental program from that we developed a scale model that helps us to convert the model's prediction from the images to the actual scale, and from that we can get the actual extent of the distresses. And here's the experimental study where we simulated the distresses on the road, and we using the computer vision model, we predicted those. We captured and identified those simulated cracks, and based on that, we developed a scale model. And to develop this scale model, we used a regression model, and we used different variables, as you can see in the images, the distance from the top and bottom of the box, and average distance, and we converted these pixels to actual length. And here's an example that how our scale model performed. in converting the pixels to actual ground truth. We can see on the left, we have longitudinal cracks that was actually 36 inch, and from the scale model we predicted it to be 29 inch, and also the next transverse crack which was actually 24 inch, and we predicted it 29 inch. So there's plus minus 3-4 inch uh, 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 error from the scale model, but the prediction was pretty good as well. We can see it was able to predict the actual length from the oblique view images. And on the right is the next images, and we can see the transverse and longitudinal cracks that we simulated and predicted as pixels from the model. It was satisfactorily converted to the actual length and known length of our of these cracks, and the numbers are within plus minus 5 inch. So that says our scale model is effectively working to convert the pixels to actual extent of the distresses. So we deployed our computer vision model on the network level, and here's an example of showing, like we assigned the prediction to a park ID and compare. We can look at the year-to-year distresses, like how longitudinal distresses increased within the year over the years from 2022 to 2020 to 2022, and this gives us a good deterioration scenario over the years. And since this is an automated method, it involved least human intervention to come up with these numbers. And for the next steps, we are trying to develop a trail condition index by combining the roughness measurements or roughness index that we got from the model and the distress data or condition data from the computer vision model. And these steps involves stakeholder involvement, and our framework is ready and packaged for statewide deployment, and with the available data, with the images and the sensor log app data, we can deploy our algorithm to get the condition with minimum time. And here's an example of how we applied our model on different segments, and we can get the bicycle roughness and the different classes of distress as well from our framework. So thank you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thanks, Zia.
Are there any questions for any of our presenters? Okay, well, thank you. Our next presentation is a rail update from Maria Hobbs and Caleb Whitehouse.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, can everyone see my presentation? So I'd like to share with you today some project highlights for our Rail Revolving Loan and Grant Program, the RRLG. We've had 2 projects that have finalized reimbursements recently, and those were a Boone County project and a Clayton County project. The information on the Boone County project is on the screen here in front of you. So the Boone Scenic Valley Railroad completed rehabilitation of approximately a mile of ties with that program. And here is some photos of that on the left that you see the tie program. The second project was a Pattison Sand Company project, and you'll see that on the right. Pattison Sand has been a recipient of several phases of our RLG program, and in this most recent project phase, they were able to complete 300 feet of new track for loading unit trains. I do want to include that the RRLG program completed $5.8 million in reimbursements during the calendar year 2023. And we will be soliciting applications here towards the end of May for the next round of funding. So if you have interest in that program, please stay tuned for that notice to come out in NOFO. Another item I do want to mention is the congratulations to the city of Waterloo with the assistance of Nick and his team from Intercog. They did receive an award of $750,000 for a neighborhood access and equity grant program that's NAE under the IIJA bill in looking at connecting communities and improving safety. So it is a planning study that will support the possible relocation of CN's rail yard to the outskirts of town. So very exciting on that. The last item here that I want to talk to you about is our state rail plan. And I visited with this group in December. You heard Sam mention that earlier today during this call as well. So we are planning to update our state rail plan with a goal of 2025. Today, we will look at kind of the development and progress of what's happened since the last time I was talking to you over a couple of months, and we will ask for your assistance with a Mentimeter exercise as well. So this slide may look familiar to you. This was the engagement plan that we presented, and it's kind of a reminder of our timeline. We have been busy the last couple of months, and through in-person and online stakeholder engagements, we've conducted surveys to really seek information from our Rail Advisory Council, our Freight Advisory Council. We have a Passenger Rail Advisory Council meeting scheduled for late April. And today we're here talking with you folks and asking for your assistance as well to really get that complete whole picture of all aspects of rail, both freight and passenger here in Iowa. So at this time, I'm going to ask for the assistance of Caleb Whitehouse. He will be assisting with the Mentimeter exercise. And Caleb, I'm going to see if you... there we go. We have that pulled up there. So I'm going to stop sharing at this time.
Okay. I shared a link in the chat, or you can use the QR code on screen now to, oh, let me share my screen again.
Oh, sorry. I think I may have bumped you right out.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see 5 people have joined. Just give a thumbs up through the application when you join, and we can get started. I'll wait for, I don't know, about 20 people to hop in. Also, if you are in the DOT, please do not participate. This is for the MPO RPA staff. So I'll ask, this presentation will ask just a couple questions. You can submit your response, and then I might, based on the responses, follow up with questions. So feel free to share. So the first question is, what do you think should be the vision, goals, and objectives of Iowa's rail system? This is freight rail and passenger rail, of course. expanded passenger rail. Join the Maria, I
Yep,
am blanking on that acronym.
MIPR, yep. So right now, that's a current legislation proposal that's been, it's made it through 2 funnels. I'll mention that for the group, and we are pending, I guess, a final vote and approval from the legislature in this session to see if Iowa can join that again. It's been a number of years, I think 2011, since Iowa was a member of that. But it is a Midwest intercity passenger rail council and committee that we would be joining and looking at and being able to collaborate with some other neighboring states on rail initiatives.
Maintain existing Amtrak service, expand passenger rail, move freight, and have smooth and safe crossings. That's a good one. Rail crossing safety, especially for vulnerable road users, connecting people and goods in the most effective way possible. Expand and build out passenger rail as an actual viable option for transportation. Support passenger rail, connecting all Iowa cities, efficient movements of good and safety, equitable access to rail transportation, join MIPIRC, help rail workers, expand passenger rail. Okay, I'm just breezing through these. If anyone wants to expand on one of these, reduce blocked crossings, that will come up in the next question, don't worry. Safe, so I won't ask you to expand on it now. Safe, convenient, reliable, modern, world-class passenger and freight rail transportation. More passenger rail options, encourage more rail use, intermodal and other. They should encompass the movement of people, goods, and services to expand in economic growth in Iowa. Continue to improve resiliency to extreme weather, regional passenger rail and interstate high-speed passenger rail, i.e. join the 21st century and be a first world country. Make the railroads be more cooperative with local efforts. That's a good one. Address rail and road conflicts to move goods and people efficiently. Build better relationship with railroads. Review high-speed options, quiet zones. To lessen the amount of trucks on the highway. That's a good one. Crossing safety. Intermodal usage. Grow more connected with the country versus isolated by being in crucial conversations / groups on passenger rail to get more cooperation from railroad companies when we're working with them. Sweet. Those are all good responses. We've asked the same question with the Freight Advisory Council and the Rail Advisory Council, and gotten some of the same stuff with safety, especially, but connect public universities by, that's a good idea. But a lot of new stuff as well. So does anyone, I'm gonna give like, I don't know, 10 seconds, just real quick, so I don't feel like I'm leaving anyone out. And then we'll move to the next question. Okay. Next question. Broadly speaking, so not necessarily like specific locations, but broadly speaking, what issues do you see in your region with rail service or operations? This could be blocked crossings were mentioned. Rail safety is a concern for sure. Blocked crossings, there we go. So yeah, we will ask for specific problem areas in the future, but for now, just generally, what kinds of issues are you seeing? Rail worker safety, intermodal access, passenger rail access. Communicating with the railroad is impossible. Infrastructure is not great, or bridges. No passenger rail connection in the metro area to other metros. Trespasser conflicts. That came up with the railroads. They have issues with trespassing, lack of political interest to move the public's interest on passenger rail forward, block crossings, unsafe rural crossings. The railroad is unresponsive when trying to implement local project that may cross a railroad and it significantly delays the project. No passenger service. Passenger rail access communication with railroad companies, i.e. won't implement quiet zones. The train location would likely be on the outskirts of town, train station location away from being connected by public transit. Yeah, I was thinking about this with like adding passenger rail. Like it'd be super difficult to get a centrally located train station, even though they used to exist in like metro areas. Block crossings, especially critical access points along the Mississippi. Yep. Perception of blocked crossings. Rail yard located in disadvantaged community. So for perception of blocked crossings, is that you feel like there's, I don't know. Can you expand on that? Passenger rail is only in Southeast Iowa. Local terminals at river indicate that railroad doesn't work well together. Okay. Anything else? Quiet zones requested by the public, rail lines being sold, and new company making negotiations restart with projects. Yep, I can see that. Does anyone want to expand on the perceptions of block crossings, train noise? With service creating new rail lines connecting cities, I would like to see the DOT use some of the interstate right-of-ways for passenger rail. There's often plenty of space for both 2 lanes and railroad. Just the number of participants or the number of responses? Okay, couple more minutes. And then we'll move on. Passenger rail in the area is unreliable due to mechanical issues. What kind of upgrades are the railroads asking for? Like a separate track? Feel free to unmute if you want to expand on that.
This is Gina. In our case, it's on the Illinois side right now, and the Illinois DOT is negotiating with one of our Class 2 railroads. And as I understand, they want more than what we originally had anticipated when we went for grant funding. And we have a significant shortfall to be able to make up the difference to upgrade the rail to the extent that the railroad would like. So I think, I think some realistic or standardization of that might be helpful related to passenger rail. So that's. And we've been negotiating with DOT has been negotiating with the railroad for probably 5, 6, 7 years already. And there's not really any incentive to move the passenger rail forward unless we have more money. So.
I have a question for the group. The question of rail safety has come up a lot in the past over a year now. And I'm wondering, as transportation planners, have you gotten questions from your member communities about rail safety?
No.
No, okay. That's one no. It's something I had been thinking about with regards to the rail plan, and something we'll be looking at.
I'd say a lot of our safety issues come from blockages. And then, it becomes trespassing, obviously, once they're, putting themselves in harm's way, and trying to navigate those crossings, especially pedestrian.
Right. Okay.
I know for our communities, at least, we've actually had some public meetings within some like cities in our metro area pop up about regarding block crossings. Like there's some communities that are completely surrounded by railroad tracks. So there's literally no way for emergency services to get in and out in case, a certain time of day where all the trains are lined up correctly and all the tracks where literally there's no way in or out. That does happen sometimes, weirdly enough.
Right. Okay, well, we can move on from this. The last thing I was going to mention was at our December meeting, I believe, we asked you guys where in that, Maria, can you pull up that engagement plan from the slides? Real quick. Sorry to spring this on you. There it is. So we asked you who we're missing out on getting input from, and you guys said the local cities and counties, and I agree. So we were hoping that you guys would help us reach out to them. So I'm going to ask for a few volunteers to help us create a survey that we can send to your members, asking for the more specific problem areas that I don't know, that cities and counties have found and they'd like to see addressed, because there's a lot of times, we hear about a rail issue that a city has, 5 years after it became an issue, or 10 years after it became an issue, or it's been an issue for a long time and we haven't heard about it. So we want to get all of those things, or collect all of that input, not necessarily to be included in the rail plan, but just to have. So Maria, if you go to the next slide that has my email and Maria's email, you can message me on Teams or you can email me if you're interested. I'm thinking we just need like a 1-hour meeting to set up a survey, just a list of questions, and I don't know, it shouldn't be too hard. So I would appreciate any help you guys can give us. So thanks. Any volunteers right off the bat?
Caleb, we would be interested, either myself or one of my staff.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Caleb. I got sidetracked a little bit there. Can you kind of run that by me one more time?
Yeah. So we want to compile a list of all the issues that are all the very specific issues that cities and counties have with rail service, whether it's blocked crossings, like specifically, this crossing is constantly blocked, or as someone else mentioned, I don't know if it might have been you, Nick, like this neighborhood is completely cut off from the rest of the city because of block crossings, or I don't know, things like that, noise, something that we can, basically a list of issues that we can have going forward, specific issues. So we wanted to,
and have like some basically local representatives that are backing those. Is that kind of what?
or like we can, have on paper in
Yeah.
2024 AD,
So
this
that it
issue was
isn't
raised
just,
to the DOT.
just a list of like, perceived issues, I guess, kind of.
Like, someone might say the train is too loud, but like,
Yeah.
is that an issue? Or,
Yeah.
or like they might say a blocking is crossed, but it's really just, or a crossing is blocked. But is that just because you're crossing at the time the train's always, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think, we've had a lot of those conversations, so I don't think it would be hard for us to kind of, help
Yeah.
out with that. Yeah, no,
So-
we'd be happy to.
My idea is, instead of, I want to develop the survey with some of you guys, and then
Sure.
Ask you guys to also distribute it to your policy board and technical advisory committees, instead of, I don't know, I think that might be the best avenue for us to reach the entire
Personalize it
state
a little more.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't want to use you guys as middlemen to get to the cities and counties, but I'm hoping that we can kind of avoid using you guys as middlemen, basically. So
Sign me.
Sign you up, you said?
Yes, please. Yep.
Right,
You
your
bet.
name. Sweet. Anyone else? Again, if you're not sure, you can email me or Maria. So. Okay, that's all I had, Travis.
Okay, so our last presentation is Andrea White. She's doing an overview of the certified carbon reduction strategy.
Good morning. Let me get my screen shared. The right window here. Okay. I'm going to start actually with a quick update on performance measures. I've gotten a couple questions on this in the past couple weeks, so I just wanted to run through a quick reminder of the status of this for MPOs and us, the state, this year. So the greenhouse gas performance measure, that was a new measure that was proposed, finalized late last year. Initially, it was going to be due from states on February 1st of this year, but there's been a lawsuit that involves quite a few states, and that put a bit of a pause on the deadline. So Federal Highway extended that to March 29th. I haven't heard anything new regarding the lawsuit or any further extensions or changes. So as of now, we're planning to submit our target by the end of next week. If anything changes with that and we don't wind up submitting it because of further delays, I would certainly let you all know. Otherwise, you should get an email from either me or Travis end of next week or beginning of the following week to let you know that it's been submitted. MPOs would then have 6 months to support the state target or set their own. The safety targets, that's an annual process at the moment. We're still on that annual cycle. So if that holds, then our targets would be due at the end of August, and then MPOs would have 6 months to submit their safety targets after that. There was a draft rulemaking that just closed last week that would transition that process from an annual process where you set 5-year rolling averages to a process that's only done every 3 years where you set a 3-year average target. Like I said, the rulemaking just closed. They're not usually that fast with the rulemaking process, so I'm not sure whether any changes will be implemented this year or not. But we will certainly give you MPOs a heads up whenever we do hear more on that, and whether it'll still be process as usual or if there's going to be changes to it this year. And then finally, PM2 and PM3, pavement and bridge condition and system performance and freight targets. We're in the middle of the 4-year performance period for those. We do have a report due this year, states, for kind of a mid-progress report where we talk about whether we met our 2-year targets and how we're doing towards our 4-year targets. And then we have the opportunity to adjust our 4-year targets. And that's due October 1st. If we do adjust any targets, any MPOs that supported our targets would need to either readopt the new ones or set their own within 6 months. I don't know the likelihood of us changing targets. We don't really have all the data in yet for our performance last year. We were more conservative in our target setting, so I guess hopefully we won't need to adjust any targets, but we'll bring that conversation back to MPOs this summer or early fall. So that's just a reminder of kind of all the federal highway performance stuff. So if there are any questions on that, I can address them. Otherwise, I'll roll into the CRS. All right, so rolling right into the CRS then. We finally have our carbon reduction strategy certified. So just wanted to give a quick presentation on what is in that document. So start with a reminder on what's in the CRP of the overall program, and talk about the strategy itself, how we developed it, the actual strategies within the strategy, and thoughts on next steps. So carbon reduction program, this was one of the new programs under IJA in 2021. It's a formula program. Iowa receives around 80 million over 5 years. It does have to be sub-allocated by population. So because of that, we've assigned targets to TMAs and MPOs to be able to program the funds for projects in their areas. Most of these types of projects that are going to be able to reduce emissions are going to be more metro-focused projects. So because of that, and because of the administrative challenges, if we were to give all the RPAs targets too, they'd be relatively small. So Iowa DOT is administering the remainder population portion as well as that for anywhere in the state. The main requirement of the program is that states have to develop a carbon reduction strategy. It had to be developed by last November, which was 2 years after the approval of IJA. The strategy doesn't have very many specific requirements. It has to be developed in consultation with MPOs. It has to identify strategies and projects to reduce transportation emissions. It has to be updated at least every 4 years. Our strategy was certified, like I said, recently, just a month ago today, actually. So we're glad to have that done. Our approach for this initial carbon reduction strategy was to address the federal requirements, but keep the document itself relatively streamlined. We looked at this less as a new planning activity and more as a chance to kind of compile existing relevant strategies and initiatives from all of your MPO plans as well as our statewide plans, and kind of pull them together into one cohesive strategy. So this was the development timeline. So we started this in late 2022 by coordinating with MPOs and pulling together strategies from long-range plans and other relevant planning documents. I forget the actual number, but I think there was, I want to say like 350 strategies that we pulled together from all your plans and our plans. So that was a lot to try to sort through and whittle down. So first quarter of last year, we did do that. We synthesized our draft strategies, came up with 5 strategy areas and 17 specific strategies from that overall collection. And we had MPOs review those. We finished the draft document last spring or summer, and that went through internal review as well as external MPO review. And then we got it submitted back in August of last year. So this graphic was in the plan, so it's a little incorrect in that it wasn't certified until this calendar year, but that's where we are now. In addition to the strategies, one of the things we noticed with a lot of what we pulled from your plans and our plans were these common objective areas on the left. So they're not necessarily strategies in and of themselves, but they're common elements of various strategies. So we made sure to highlight those 7 objectives and talk a bit about them in the strategy as well. And then the strategies fall into the 5 groups on the right. They're not prioritized per se, but they are listed in order of frequency of occurrence. So not surprisingly, multimodal transportation, especially bike ped and transit, was the most frequently mentioned strategy that we pulled from plans. And then I'm going to walk through each category briefly here. So I'll just go on to those slides. Multimodal transportation, this was the only category with more than 3 strategies. This one had 5. So the main emphasis here is getting out of single occupant vehicles, using other modes or other methods of travel. So public transit, bike ped infrastructure, complete streets overall, just reducing single occupant vehicles in general, and then supporting planning and perhaps eventually implementation of passenger and commuter rail. Operational efficiency, this is focused on improving the existing transportation system and trying to reduce congestion, reduce idling, transfer demand, just reduce demand in general. So the main strategies here relate to TSMO, Transportation Systems Management and Operations. So things like improving signal coordination, intelligent transportation system components, etc. State of good repair, just keeping the transportation system in good condition is a way to help reduce emissions. And travel demand management and shifting how people travel or when people travel to reduce that demand during peak times. Alternative fuels, this was certainly, it's a growing area now with the NEVI program that we're administering, like Garrett mentioned earlier. So these strategies focused on fuel infrastructure as well as using vehicles that utilize alternative or renewable fuels. So that could be in our own fleets, state fleets, city, county, planning agency fleets if you have them, but also particularly transit vehicles and commercial vehicles is a growing area as well. The strategy also had a focus on coordination. This is a strategy where the state government does not have, we don't have history of providing fuel infrastructure. And it's something that requires a lot of coordination with the private sector and with utility companies. So that's a strategy in and of itself. Construction strategies, reducing emissions as we build and maintain the system itself. So incorporating sustainable elements and construction practices when projects are actually built. Cross-sector use of right-of-way. I think the most common application of that would be potentially trying to either generate or transport energy along transportation right-of-way. And then reducing carbon impacts during construction projects. Things like the I-380 Express, helping to reduce demand for that corridor while 380 was being reconstructed. And we had a few miscellaneous topics that didn't kind of fit anywhere else. So transportation and land use planning comes up a lot. It's not an area that, as a state, we don't really have control over land use, nor do MPOs and RPAs, but it's an important conversation for us all to be a part of because of the very integral relationship between transportation and land use. Improving freight efficiency, that's an area that can have a lot of benefit for transportation emissions. When we look at that greenhouse gas target that I was talking about earlier, it's pretty clear from a statewide perspective, it's the use of diesel and freight that is what's increasing our emissions over time, not passenger traffic. So improving freight efficiency could have a major benefit for the state and other projects and programs. So in terms of where we're at and next steps, the carbon reduction strategy, the way we set it up is it includes types of carbon reduction program projects. So the strategy is not going to direct an MPO on how to spend their CRP money. We wanted to make it broad and provide MPOs the opportunity to integrate whatever strategies are appropriate into their planning and programming process. So I'm going to come back in a second, and I would love to hear from MPOs on the line with how you're proceeding with your CRP funding this year, what you what you're doing in terms of types of projects that you are looking to fund. Just a couple other quick points first. Where we're at with the strategy, we are adding it into our long range plan. We're incorporating it by reference to our plan. We're doing that along with two other documents. One is the resilience improvement plan that Sam mentioned earlier. Once that is finalized and certified, we'll get that incorporated. And then the other is an internal effort that we worked on with IEDA called Transportation 4.0, kind of focused on economic development, freight strategies, ways to move freight more efficiently in the state. So that's been, that was an internal business plan driven project. So all three of these will be posted on our long range plan website. Both of them, other than the RIP, are posted currently, so you can check those out. Then we'll be talking about implementation. I think probably a logical next step for us is we got the CRP, we had the existing ICAP program that funded similar projects, and we have the NEVI program. So talking more about continuing to develop these programs and look to develop some more alignment between them is probably a logical next step for us in terms of our implementation. So with that, that's all I had. Like I said, I would really like to hear from MPOs if you're willing to speak up or put it in the chat in terms of what types of projects you're looking at funding and any other questions you have, of course.
So in Des Moines, we haven't decided yet. We are going through our long range transportation plan right now. And so once we go through that a little bit more, we want to think more strategically or creatively about whether there's something that comes from the plan that would make sense for it. The other thing we've talked about with our board and with our staff is we applied to, and I can't remember the name of the program, but they had all the EV charging and stuff like that. And we weren't funded through that. And we had talked about if we're not funded through it, maybe we use this to help fund those projects to put EV charging stations throughout the community. So that's something we're going to be looking at right now.
Thanks, Dylan.
Andrea, this is Gina from Bi-State. We just went through a second round. In our first round, we had a project, I guess overall, the eligible items that are eligible under the CRP are what we've gone ahead and agreed to. Our first project was a roundabout. They asked for preliminary engineering funding, and so we provided that. And then we are currently have only received a second application from one of our cities, and it will be to, again, another preliminary engineering for a grade separation that they have greater money for, but that grade separation doesn't allow for PE. So that is yet to be approved, but has been requested. I think our challenge is that it's a new program, and our locals just not sure how to apply the projects they need to the funding that's available. And it's not a significant amount either. So I think that's something of a challenge.
All right, thanks, Gina.
I could jump in quick next. This is Kent Ralston, MPO JC. So we have not actually gone through a funding round because we do this every 2 years here locally using the CRP funds. But the way we're leaning towards is using our TAP scoring criteria that we already have for CRP projects, because our assumption is most of the CRP projects we're going to receive are probably going to be TAP type projects. And because TAP projects are eligible for CRP funding, that's sort of the method we're planning on using. Obviously, there's going to be some projects that are probably submitted that are way outside of our scoring criteria or the use of our scoring criteria. And we'll just have to take a look at those projects and sort of score them based on their merits and just move forward with sort of the local policies and what folks want in those cases.
Thanks, Kat.
This is Liz Berg from the Corridor MPO. Similar to MPO JC, we are operating as if the TAP eligible projects are eligible for CRP as well as transit projects. So we took the projects that were scored from our long range plan, existing projects, and allowed and are allowing CRP to go towards them. So far, we've only programmed it for transit projects.
Thanks, Liz.
This is Kyle Thompson with the Ames Area MPO. We're doing our first application cycle right now for CRP. We kind of do it in coordination with our STBG and TAP application cycles every year in the spring. We kind of anticipate the projects we listed were TAP type projects, and then ITS type projects or TISMO projects, and then EV projects. And I know the city of Ames is going to apply for funding for their later phases of their ITS network build out. And that's something that the earlier phases got ICAP funding for. So I think that's kind of where we're initially going to use our funds for, is for the ITS type projects. We didn't allow transit projects for now because our rationale is we get so little CRP funding as a small MPO. And we already fund transit projects frequently through our STBG funding. So we kind of kept this limited to kind of multimodal, non-transit, and then the TISMO oriented side of things. So.
Thanks, Kyle.
Why not have another Kyle follow that Kyle? This is Kyle with Intercog. Aldina put some comments in the chat. She's leading the CRP for Intercog. I'd just like to add that we have a project ranking that's going to be done by our MPO staff rather than by the cities. So we're going to look at projects, if we receive any, and rank and recommend based off of the ability to meet our the goals set out in our long range plan. I think one of the things that we're running into, and this goes to our this also goes for our TAP funds, is cities' abilities to provide local match, dealing with reduced property taxes with the statewide property tax ceiling. We have almost $1 million in TAP funds, and we received 0 applications this year. Even with our staff going out over the past year and proactively seeking projects and working with communities, we might have 1 CRP application this year, but that's pretty much the limit on applications between those 2 programs. The one question I had for you, Andrea, and for the group is there, like, how should we take into consideration projects other than like our long range goals? You know, is this really a CRP worthy project? For example, the one application we may be looking at is there's a choke point at a rail crossing, and adding 2 additional paved lanes to make it a continuous 4-lane corridor. You know, does that count as a CRP worthy project?
Yeah, that question in particular, that'd be an interesting one to chat with Federal Highway about, because there's a stipulation about adding capacity in the guidelines, but there are use exceptions. So that's something we need to have some more discussion about. But in terms of what projects to fund and what's CRP worthy, that's where we really want to leave it up to each MPO. And part of that may be the growing process as you all start implementing this, and whatever you can get to begin with, and then look to develop a more specific program over time based on your area's priorities. I don't think we see any faults at all with any of the approaches that have been mentioned here so far, whether it's TAP, transit, ITS, EV infrastructure, et cetera. So not really much of an answer, Kyle, sorry, but
no, that's okay. What I've been explaining to communities in our minimal conversations thus far is we're putting the onus on the applicant to explain how the project will reduce transportation related carbon emissions. Not necessarily saying they need to go through a full like benefit cost analysis type of thing, but at least putting it upon them to say specifically, like, this is how it's going to reduce emissions.
And that's an area I don't think there's any guidance in terms of you being required how to show it would reduce emissions. I don't know if anyone from Federal Highway or program management's on right now, but I know one of the things we're spending money on is diamond grinding projects because they do reduce emissions. I don't know how we quantified that or got the sign off on that. But I think Federal Highway's been generally, as long as there's a connection they can make to reducing emissions, they've been supportive of what's come up so far.
So I guess a follow-up question on that is that one of the strategies that you showed in the state plan is state of good repair. Did I see that correctly?
Yep.
So does that open up a can of worms of a city could apply for, if a road is in horrendous condition, to bring it up to a state of good repair using CRP funds?
That's a can of worms that's sitting over on 6th Street with Federal Highway. Like I said, that's where we've been able to do the diamond grinding treatment specifically. I'm not sure that any type of treatment is being allowed per se. That's something we could see if we can get some clarification from Federal Highway on.
Okay.
I would say for now, try to avoid just going that route if you couldn't find other projects to fund.
Well, that's good. I mean, our guidelines right now that were adopted specifically, I think we mentioned a lot of the specific project eligible activities that are mentioned in the bill. But we tried to take a cognizant effort towards focusing in on projects we would, as staff, prefer to see. And so our guidelines don't really list anything that would fall under just state of good repair.
Sure. Any other MPOs want to jump in?
This is Michelle from Simcoe. We just did an application cycle and our MPO policy board chose to give funding to 4 different projects. And so 2 of those are trail related and 1 is transit.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle.
Hi, this is Dan Fox from Dubuque, and we have awarded our carbon reduction funds to our streets project, so ITS type improvements.
Okay. Did I see that you guys just got another $2 million for that?
Yeah, SMART grant. So we should have all the phases of that project funded.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the feedback from everyone. And this will be a process that continues to develop, obviously, as we get used to the program. So thanks again.
Okay, well, thank you, Andrea. Just a few reminders. Your transportation planning work programs are due March 29th. And then obviously the finals are due in May. And then after that, the planning agreements will be finalized in June. As Zach talked about, tips are due June 15th and finals are due July 15th. And then related to TA set aside, continue sending your applications, award letters, and summaries to Sue Hollenkamp. I know these are a little more strict of requirements than in the past, so just make sure to continue documenting all of these things and sending them to her. So with that, are there any other questions or comments or things for the good of the group?
Travis, for the TA set aside, will we get a response back of whether what's the process for that?
Unfortunately, that's probably a Sue question, so you'll have to send that to her. But if you want, I can follow up with her and get that to you.
Yeah, I was just curious if it was similar to the past where DOT would provide comments and let us know if it's an eligible project or if things need to be addressed.
Okay. With that, our next meeting, so we have, our next meeting is June 26th. It'll be in person in the materials conference room. Then September 25th in person, and then obviously the December meeting will be virtual. So is there anything else for the good of the group? Okay, well, thanks everybody. And
One thing for you, or actually, I guess I just got an answer in the chat, which was with regards to when and where will the meeting recording be?
we'll be sending that out with the meeting materials. So, okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks.